Welcome, listeners, to BookCast FM, bringing books to life, one cast at a time. Today, we're diving deep into a productivity classic that honestly could change how you look at your to-do list forever. It's Brian Tracy's Eat That Frog.
And it's really not just about getting more done, is it? It's about getting the right things done, especially those big kind of hairy tasks you keep putting off, the ones that would actually make the biggest difference.
Exactly. So what's this frog we're talking about? Let's unpack that. The whole idea hinges on this great quote, often linked to Mark Twain. Eat a live frog first thing in the morning and nothing worse will happen to you the rest of the day. So the frog, in Tracy's world, is your biggest, most important task, usually when you're most tempted to procrastinate on.
Right. But it's also the one that, if you actually do it, gives you the greatest positive results. And what's so good about Tracy's book, I think, is how he takes these potentially complex ideas and just boils them down into really actionable steps. He basically argues that successful people, they make tackling these frogs a priority. They focus and they act. The main idea. You can't possibly eat every single tadpole and frog out there. Focus on the biggest, ugliest, most important one first.
Yeah, makes sense. And we'll explore his core concepts today, things like planning, time management, the 80-20 rule, which is huge, also the ABCDE method for getting really clear on priorities, and even this thing called the law of forced efficiency, which basically reminds us, look, there's never enough time to do everything, but there's always enough time to do the most important thing. Tough love.
It is. And we'll see how self-discipline really becomes the master skill through all of this. Plus, we'll touch on practical stuff like daily goals, breaking down big tasks, and crucially these days, handling digital distractions.
So by the end of this deep dive, you'll really get why Tracy says you don't need to do more, you need to do the right things more often. And how every minute spent planning saves 10 minutes in execution. Huge potential there. Okay, let's jump in.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. Chapter 1, Set the Table. Tracy says something really interesting here, that clarity, or the lack of it, is the #1 reason we procrastinate.
Exactly. His first point is blunt. Decide exactly what you want. Clarity is essential. I mean, if you don't have a clear destination, you're just sort of drifting, right? And that feels overwhelming. So it gives these 7 practical steps to get that clarity. Pretty straightforward, actually. 1, decide exactly what you want. Be specific. 2, write it down. Get it out of your head and onto paper. 3, set a deadline, and maybe mini deadlines for bigger things. 4, make a list. Everything you need to do to get there. 5, organize that list. Turn it into a real plan. 6, take action. Like right away. Don't wait. And 7, do something every single day. Even a small step. Keep the momentum going. I love that bit about think on paper.
Yeah.
And the statistic he uses is just, wow, only about 3% of adults have clear written goals, and they accomplish 5 to 10 times as much. That really hammers home the power of just writing stuff down, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And it connects perfectly to Chapter 2. Plan every day in advance. This is where you make that clarity operational. And this is where he makes that incredible claim. Every minute spent in planning saves 10 minutes in execution. Think about that return on investment, a 1,000% return on energy just for planning.
A 1,000% return. That's wild. How does that work? I mean, what does that daily planning actually look like, according to Tracy?
Well, it's pretty simple, but powerful. First, always use a list. Don't try to keep it all in your head. Second, he strongly recommends planning the night before. Let your subconscious chew on it overnight. Then, break down your lists. You might have a master list, monthly, weekly, and then your daily list. Checking things off is important too. Gives you that little dopamine hit, that sense of progress. And finally, keep the list, flexible but focused. It's about having a track to run on, as he puts it.
Okay, so you've got clear goals. You've got your daily plan ready from the night before. Now, the big question, how do you actually pick out the frog? Which task gets that prime morning spot? This leads us straight into Chapter 3. Apply the 80-20 rule to everything.
Yes, the Pareto principle. We've all heard it. 20% of your activities will account for 80% of your results. But the real challenge, and where Tracy pushes us, is to identify that critical 20%. Because, let's be honest, it's often easier to do the trivial many, the 80%, rather than the vital few, the 20%. Resisting that urge is key.
So like if you're in sales, maybe 80% of your actual revenue comes from just 20% of your clients, right? It's about fighting that temptation to clear up all the little easy things first, and instead focusing on the tasks with, as he says, the greatest potential long-term consequences.
Precisely. And that focus on consequences leads directly to Chapter 4. Consider the consequences. Tracy really pushes us to think long-term. Long-term thinking improves short-term decision-making. Simple, but profound. So before you start a task, ask yourself, what happens if I do this? What happens if I don't do this? What are the real down-the-road impacts?
Yeah, that reminds me of like studying for a big exam, starting early versus cramming the night before. The long-term consequences are pretty obvious. Better grades, less stress if you start early.
That's a perfect example. And since we know we can't do everything, Chapter 5 introduces a concept that sounds almost wrong at first. Practice creative procrastination. Basically, you have to consciously decide what not to do.
Wait, hang on. Strategic procrastination, that sounds almost too good to be true. Tell me more.
Huh. It does, doesn't it? But it makes sense. The idea is you deliberately postpone or just ignore the low-value, non-essential tasks. This frees up your mental bandwidth and your actual time for the high-value ones, the frogs. He even suggests using zero-based thinking. Ask yourself, knowing what I know now, if I weren't already doing this task, would I choose to start it today? And if the honest answer is no, then, well, maybe you should stop doing it, or at least put it way down the priority list.
So you're saying it's actually okay, even smart, to put off answering that less important email if it means you can really focus on finishing that major project proposal?
Absolutely. You have to procrastinate on something, so make sure it's the small stuff. Procrastinate on small tasks, he says. And this discipline clears the way for one of the most practical tools in the whole book, Chapter 6. Use the ABCDE method continually.
Okay, this sounds like where the theory really becomes a daily practice. How does this ABCDE thing work?
Right, it's super hands-on. You take your list of tasks for the day, everything you think you need to do. Then you go through and label each one. A is for tasks you must do, serious consequences if they don't get done. These are your true frogs. And if you have more than one A, you rank them. A1, A2, A3. B tasks are things you should do. There are consequences, but they're milder, like returning a non-urgent phone call. The rule: never do a B task if an A task is still unfinished. C tasks are things that would be nice to do, like having coffee with a colleague maybe. Zero real consequences if you don't do them. Only tackle these after A's and B's are done. D is for delegate. Can someone else do this? If yes, delegate it. Free up your time for those A tasks. And E is for eliminate. Tasks that, when you really think about it, don't need to be done at all. Just cross them right off your list. Feels good.
And the absolute key, the golden rule he emphasizes, is start immediately on your A1 task and then to stay at it until it is complete. That A1, that's your number one ugliest frog.
Exactly. And building on that kind of ruthless prioritization, Chapter 7 encourages you to zoom out slightly and focus on key result areas, your KRAs. These are like the core functions of your job or your major life roles, the things that you are responsible for producing results in. Usually 5 to 7 key areas. If you don't do them well, your overall performance suffers significantly. They're the foundations.
So for that sales manager we mentioned, the KRAs might be prospecting, presenting solutions, closing sales, maybe managing the team, the core outputs.
Precisely. And the exercise Tracy suggests is powerful. First, identify your 5-7 KRAs. Second, honestly assess how good you are in each one. Give yourself a grade. And third, this is crucial, identify your weakest key result area, because as he puts it, you are only as strong as your weakest key result area. Improving that single weakest KRA often has the biggest leverage effect on your overall success.
That feels like a really powerful diagnostic tool, actually, for your career, for personal projects, anything. And then building on that focus, Chapter 8 introduces something called the Law of Three. What's that about?
This is another simplifying principle. Tracy posits that out of all the tasks you do, typically only 3 core tasks will account for 90% or even more of your total contribution and value, 90%. So he says you should constantly ask yourself, if I could only do one task all day long, which task would contribute the most value to my work or my goals? Then ask it again for the second most valuable, and a third time, find your big 3.
Wow. So instead of feeling overwhelmed by, say, 25 things on your list, you identify those big 3 and dedicate maybe 80–90% of your work time just to those. That idea of do fewer things but do them better really cuts through the noise, doesn't it? It seems almost too simple.
It's deceptively simple, but incredibly focusing. And to make that focus even sharper, you need to tackle the roadblocks. That's Chapter 13. Identify your key constraints. Every significant goal or project nearly always has a limiting factor, a bottleneck, that determines the speed at which you achieve it.
Okay, so like if a project team keeps missing deadlines, the constraint might not be everyone's effort, but maybe one specific step that always gets delayed. Or, like you mentioned personally, maybe a fear of public speaking is the real constraint holding back career growth, even if someone is technically brilliant.
Exactly. Tracy points out that often, maybe 80% of the time, the constraint is internal. It could be a lack of a specific skill, a bad habit like poor time management, or even a limiting belief or fear. The key is to find that one thing that, if removed, would significantly speed up your progress. Focus your energy on removing that bottleneck, and often everything else starts to flow much faster.
Right, okay. So you've identified your frog, maybe your big 3 tasks, you know your constraints. Now, how do you actually get started and stay focused? Chapter 9, prepare thoroughly before you begin, seems crucial here.
Oh, absolutely. Preparation is a massive, massive productivity multiplier. Tracy says, one of the best ways for you to overcome procrastination is by having everything you need at hand before you begin. Think about it. A messy desk, missing files, not having the right software open. It all creates friction. It makes just starting feel harder.
Yeah, it drains your willpower before you even tackle the actual task. So clearing your workspace, gathering notes, maybe even quickly visualizing the finished task. That's not fluff, it's actually essential prep work.
Totally essential. It sets the stage perfectly, especially when you're facing a really big, daunting task. And that's where Chapter 10 comes in with a great metaphor. Take it one oil barrel at a time.
Ah, I remember this one. The story about marking a path across the desert with oil barrels so travelers only had to focus on reaching the next visible barrel. It's such a powerful image for huge projects.
It really is. It breaks down overwhelming goals into manageable steps. Tracy advises breaking large tasks into small, concrete chunks, maybe focus blocks, of 30 to 60 minutes. And then your only job is to just do the next thing. Focus solely on that next oil barrel. And as he says, the rest will take care of itself. It builds momentum almost automatically.
And this idea of breaking things down gets even more tactical in Chapter 18. Slice and dice the task. He offers 2 specific methods here, the salami slice and Swiss cheese.
Yes. These are great for just getting started when you feel stuck. The salami slice is exactly what it sounds like. You commit to doing just one thin slice of the big task. Like instead of write the report, your task is write the introduction, or even just create the report outline, just one slice. The Swiss cheese method is about punching holes in the task. You find small, maybe 5 or 10-minute actions you can take immediately just to get some traction, like finding one statistic or making one phone call related to the project. The goal for both is simply to begin, because, as Tracy notes, inertia is powerful. Once you start working on a task, you tend to keep going. Getting started is often the hardest part.
Absolutely. And to make sure you can actually do those slices or stay focused on the next oil barrel, Chapter 19 is vital. Create large chunks of time. You need dedicated, uninterrupted time for the important stuff.
You really do. Deep work requires focus. Most important tasks require long, uninterrupted periods of work, Tracy insists. So you need to actively schedule these blocks into your calendar, ideally during your peak energy times. Treat them like crucial appointments you wouldn't break. And during those blocks, 0 distractions. Close email, silence the phone, maybe even put a sign on your door. You have to fiercely protect that time.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the how of getting tasks done, but Tracy also digs into the mindset, the inner game, right? Chapter 11, upgrade your key skills, seems to fit here.
Yes, this is really important. He argues that procrastination often isn't just laziness. It stems from feeling incompetent or lacking confidence in a specific area needed for the task. So, the better you become at a key task, he says, the more you enjoy it and the less you procrastinate on it. It creates this positive upward spiral. Learning isn't just about getting better, it's about reducing the friction to start.
That makes so much sense. So if you keep putting off that task involving, I don't know, data analysis, maybe the real solution isn't just more willpower, but taking a short course to get more comfortable with Excel or whatever tool you need.
Precisely. It addresses the root cause. And related to this, in Chapter 12, he encourages you to leverage your special talents. Don't just focus on fixing weaknesses. Double down on what you're naturally good at.
I like that. You are designed to do something especially well. Your job is to find it, focus on it, and then dedicate yourself to it. It's permission to lean into your strengths.
Exactly. It allows you to strive for excellence where you have a natural advantage rather than just trying to be mediocre across the board. And this focus on internal capability leads naturally to Chapter 14. Put the pressure on yourself. Successful people don't just wait for external deadlines.
Right. They create their own sense of urgency. Set your own, perhaps earlier, deadlines. Imagine someone is watching over your shoulder. Start the day strong. Act as if.
That internal drive, that self-imposed pressure is critical, but you need fuel for that drive. Which brings us to Chapter 15. Maximize your personal powers. This is all about energy management, not just time management. Your ability to work at your best is largely determined by how well you take care of yourself. It's fundamental.
So getting enough sleep, eating well, exercising, taking proper breaks, These aren't optional nice-to-haves. They're actually essential tools for high performance and avoiding burnout.
Absolutely non-negotiable if you want sustained productivity. And underpinning all this action is your mindset. Chapter 16, motivate yourself into action. Tracy's big point here is that motivation isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you generate internally. You are your own biggest cheerleader, he says.
So focusing on your goals, visualizing success, using positive self-talk. These aren't just feel-good exercises. They're practical techniques to fuel your drive and overcome resistance. It ties back to that idea. You become what you think about most of the time.
Definitely. But in today's world, there's a huge external challenge to all this focus and motivation. Technology. Chapter 17, get out of the technological time sinks, feels more relevant now than ever.
Oh, for sure. He directly calls out smartphones, endless social media scrolling, constant email checking, calling them some of the greatest enemies of focus. His line, technology is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master, really hits home, doesn't it?
It really does. And the solution he offers is pure discipline. Turn off those notifications. Check email in scheduled batches, not constantly. Use airplane mode or do not disturb when you need deep focus. You have to be ruthless about protecting your attention. He cites research suggesting each time you are distracted, it takes about 17 minutes to get back into your flow. Think about how much time that wastes over a day.
Wow, 17 minutes. Yeah, that adds up incredibly fast. This really reinforces the need for those large chunks of protected time we talked about earlier. But, okay, beyond just avoiding distractions, what about the actual pace of work? Chapter 20 urges us to develop a sense of urgency. What does he mean by that? Is it about rushing?
Not necessarily rushing in a frantic, stressed way. It's more about cultivating an inner drive, a bias for action. It's about moving purposefully and quickly once you've decided on a course of action. The faster you move, he suggests, the more energy you generate and the more you get done. It's about building momentum through swift, focused execution.
Like having that internal trigger. Do it now. Instead of letting things sit, you just jump in and get started. It turns thinking into doing.
Exactly. And all these principles, the planning, prioritizing, focus, energy, urgency, they all come together in the final, powerful chapter. Single handle every task. Tracy calls this the ultimate execution strategy.
Single handling. Okay. What does that mean in practice? How does it pull everything together?
It's the habit, the discipline of starting your most important task, your A1 frog, and then staying with it, laser focused, until it is 100% complete. No switching to check email, no getting sidetracked by a quick B task, no just looking at social media. Once you begin, he insists, refuse to stop until the job is finished.
Wow. That sounds like the ultimate antidote to the multitasking myth that fragments our attention constantly. He makes a huge claim about it too, right? You can increase your productivity by 50% the day you stop multitasking.
It's a bold claim, but the principle is sound. Single handling allows you to achieve that deep flow state where you're most effective. It saves all the time and mental energy usually lost in switching contexts. And maybe most importantly, it builds incredible momentum and reinforces the discipline of seeing things through. You pick your frog, eliminate distractions, maybe set a timer, and you just stay with it. That's how you truly, finally eat that frog.
So as you've heard, Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy is so much more than just a memorable title. It really is a complete system for thinking about, planning, and executing on what truly matters. It's less about just being busy and much more about being effective by focusing your energy where it counts.
Yeah, it fundamentally reframes procrastination not as a character flaw, but as a habit you can actively change through specific techniques. It shows how clarity and planning aren't chores, they're huge time savers, and how zeroing in on those key tasks, those frogs, is really the most direct route to making significant progress in your work and life.
So listening to all this, maybe take a moment and ask yourself, what stands out as the biggest, ugliest frog you've been avoiding lately? And based on what we've discussed, what's just one small action, maybe an A1 task or a salami slice, you could take today to finally start eating it?
This deep dive has really just given you a taste of the practical wisdom in Brian Tracy's book. It's concise, it's actionable. So if you're feeling ready to really boost your productivity and start achieving those big goals, we definitely recommend getting your own copy of Eat That Frog. We've put a link to purchase it in the description.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. You've been listening to BookCast FM, where we're always bringing books to life one cast at a time. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.